Hi everyone and welcome to our webinar. Today, my colleagues and I from Defender for IoT will overview IoT enablement in the corporate SOC. We hope that you will find this information useful, and if you have any questions, please put those in the chat or contact us right after this session via our community. So today we will address this important topic with three parts. First, I will share the motivation and the best practices for the IoT enablement in the corporate SOC. And then Amit from our product team will overview the automation capabilities that are available when we integrate with Azure Sentinel. And finally, Henk from our customer experience team, an IoT engineer, will show an example for forensic investigation done with the tools available at Defender for IoT. So let's start with the motivation. So we know that introducing a new security solution or OT security solution, it requires a lot of planning, not only in the deployment stage and in the rollout stage, but also later on when doing the ongoing operations. And this to achieve the maximum value from the security solution and from the tools. And we know that a successful implementation requires collaboration between all the teams, the security teams, the SOC, and also the different engineering teams across the different sites of the organization. And then we also know that given the investment that companies or security mature companies are doing in the centralized SOC, it only makes sense to embed the new processes for OT in the same platforms and security solutions and have the holistic solution all in one place. We know that over the years, CISO traditionally were mainly responsible for IT security in the organizations. But we also see that with the increased usage of OT and IoT devices, these CISOs are more and more involved in the OT area and responsible for OT security as well. And so are the security teams that are more usually and traditionally IT oriented now also are responsible for the OT solutions and for the OT security in the organization. And for that, our motivation is to adapt all the workflows and adapt the skills of the different teams to the unique characteristics of OT and enable them with OT security. So this is the motivation. And now for the challenge. So we see an increased connectivity between IT and OT networks, and we know that these networks have very different characteristics. The OT security and OT network is very different than the IT. And we see gaps. We see that the security teams are missing the OT expertise. They usually are not aware to the type of devices and the different type of communication protocols, the network layout, and the risks that are involved with this OT equipment and network. And on the other hand, we see that the OT engineers are not so much security focused or less aware to the security of this OT equipment in their network and in the site that they are responsible for. So for that, it's very challenging for organization, and we see it across deployments with our customers. That is challenging to facilitate the cross workflows that need to include all the teams and all the sites in the organization to work and cooperate together upon OT incident or OT insight. So these are the challenges that we usually see. So the concept of SOC enablement will be that while Defender for IoT provides this continuous monitoring for your OT network and provides a lot of insight about OT, it also integrates with your existing security products. And what we recommend and aim to do is to enable the SOC teams with the unique characteristics of OT so they can have the educated conversation with the engineers on site and to ensure the readiness of the processes in the organization to be able to protect from OT cyber threat. And for that, we also usually recommend, and this is the goal, to define a focused list of use cases that are priority and are important for the organization. And with these use cases that are identified for OT, to train the SOC and facilitate the processes, and by that also to focus on also only on the relevant insights for the organization, and to reduce the noise in the SOC, because we don't want many alerts to arrive to SOC, and then the SOC team will not know how to enter and will not get the proper value. So this is the general concept for the SOC enablement and the problem that we're trying to solve. Now, when we understand the need, so what needs to be done? So Defender for IoT integrates with the existing SIEM platforms very easily from the UI. So either if you have an on-premise manager or on-premise sensor, you can log into the UI and define the SIEM that you would like to integrate with. The solution is very agnostic. We support a lot of types, various types, if it's Splunk, QRadar, ArcSight, or many more. And also, if you have Azure Sentinel, so we have native integration with Azure Sentinel. So enable the integration is the first step. Now, once you enable the integration, all the Defender for IoT alerts start being forwarded into your SIEM application. But we don't want each and every alert to create incident in the SOC, because Defender for IoT has many types of alerts for many different types of scenarios, and we want to focus on the scenarios that are important to our organization. So what needs to be done is to define the use cases, that those use cases will create the SOC incidents. Only those use cases, not any other alerts. And then for each of the use cases, we need to define the scenarios that are relevant for us and for our organization. And I can give some examples. So for example, pharmaceutical companies, they are highly regulated and they care a lot about database changes or equipment changes. So for this type of companies, these are the use cases that we will focus on. But for example, for power generation, so stability and availability will be top priority. And for other organizations, malware scenario are a priority because it's a concern for the business risk, for the financial risk. So each organization needs to define what are the relevant use cases to create incident in the SOC. And then also the recommendation is to prioritize these workflows and gradually implement it in the organization, either per workflow or per site, until all the teams are well trained and know exactly what to do when an incident is received in the SOC. So for identifying these use cases, in order to help you and to help our customers, we came up with a list of top 15 scenarios that we see that our customers usually care about and implement in their SOC. So we provide to our customers, and please be welcome to contact us via the community, and we can share with you as well this document. It's a very detailed document with the top scenarios for our customers, for example, PLC stop or multiple scans in the network. And for each one of these scenarios, we also suggest a very detailed step-by-step workflow for validating the incident, for investigating it, and also for mitigation. So this is something that we suggest to start from, and then each organization, per the priority or per the threat landscape, the security landscape, can add more or reduce. And let's take one example for use case and scenario. So the first use case is unauthorized changes to SCADA equipment. So we know that OT network has very deterministic behavior, and we don't want any unauthorized changes to the equipment. And one scenario that is relevant for this use case is, for example, PLC stop. PLC stop command that we see in the traffic. It can be either improper configuration, or it can be an indication for malicious activity. So here is, for example, an alert that is triggered by Defender for IoT for Siemens S7 protocol when a Defender for IoT identifies a PLC command, PLC stop. Of course, that we have additional alerts that are relevant for this scenario. But when I'm referring to incident, so it means that the incident will be raised if any of these alerts will be triggered by Defender for IoT, either controller reset or controller stop. This is use case when a controller has been stopped until the controller is reset, it will be down. So it's something that we want step-by-step workflow, and we want to address immediately and resolve, because this PLC can be safety PLC in facility, for example, and we find this important. So this was the first example. I'll give another example for malware found in the network. So everyone are aware about malware and the involved risks. And Defender for IoT knows to identify different and various types of malware. And we want that whenever Defender for IoT, any of alerts related to malware is triggered, we want to create an incident in the SOC. So this is an example for additional scenario. So now when we define the set of use cases that we want to address in our SOC, we need to create the incident, the rule in the SIEM application to support this incident creation. So for example, in the example that we gave for malware, we have different types of alerts that have something in common. When the alert is forwarded, the engine is malware. So we will configure the rule in the SIEM that whenever the engine is malware, we want this incident for suspicious malware to be raised. This is a very simple rule, but we can also create any type of logic that we want. We can combine different types of alerts. For example, if there is a remote access and then scanning, so we want to have the incident raised and so on. As part of the document that we have and we can share with you, we also have the same suggestions for rules for other scenarios as well. And if you're using Azure Sentinel, we also have a content pack that you can download out of the box with these 15 analytic rules. So once we defined the scope for our SOC and we created the rules in the SIEM, we now want to create the customized workflows. We want each and every incident to have a very straightforward workflow, what to do whenever the SOC operator receives this alert. He doesn't need to remember anything by heart. He just needs to follow the steps. Immediate step for mitigation, which information to document, where from to take the information in the system, and so on. So also as part of the document, we have a very detailed step-by-step, and you can use it. If it helps you, we will be happy to share it with you. And once everything is all set, we also need to provide training for the SOC team. And for that also, we have a lot of information in our website, so I encourage you to browse and to search for it. We have webinars, we have ninja trainings, we have blogs, and we also have the community where you can join and we can discuss and you can ask questions and collaborate with other peers that are part of this community about best practices. So to wrap up this part with an example, so this is the end-to-end flow that we want to achieve eventually. In this example, we integrate with Splunk and Snow. So you can see that whenever Defender for IoT alert is being forwarded to Splunk. Now the focused incidents will be presented to the SOC operator. The SOC operator can populate the required information in the snow ticket. The snow ticket will be assigned to the site expert. They will investigate and mitigate the incident, and then the site can leverage the Defender for IoT insight to strengthen the OT security posture in the site. So this is the desired end-to-end flow. Next, Amit will show the automation capabilities with Azure Sentinel. So Amit.
Thanks, Adi. Hi, everyone. So I'm Amit. I'm a product manager in Defender for IoT product group. And Adi showed us the motivation and the best practices for OT IoT enabled SOC by identify, define, and prioritize the relevant OT SOC use cases for your organization, and define relevant workflows for each one of them. The next part of the automating SOC workflows with Defender for IoT and Sentinel will demonstrate how Defender for IoT and Sentinel native integration, as an example for SIEM store system, can help you meet the challenges that Adi presented before of OT-enabled SOC, as well as also automating the best practices and the workflows that we are recommending as best practice. So we understand that simply sending Defender for IoT security alerts to existing SOC platforms and just expecting that SOC team will know what to do with that and how to handle OT security incident is not enough, mainly as OT SOC analysts usually tend to come from the IT space. And our goal in the integration of Defender for IoT in Sentinel is to introduce the OT context into the SIEM and build around that automated SOC workflows in such a way that will help customers to converge their IT and OT, first of all, under one roof, single pane of glass, which is the SIEM system. In that case, we are demonstrating Sentinel. And of course, eventually also reducing the time it takes to manage and resolve OT incident efficiently by focusing and answering the pain points that described before, which is, again, the lack skill set of SOC analysts that tend to come from the IT, lack communication between SOC team and OT engineers, workflows in the SOCs that are not adapted to the OT needs, and so on. So how do we do that in the joint solution of Defender for IoT and Sentinel, and how do we automate the SOC workflows that Adi presented before? So just to the sake of simplicity, I will use three components to describe the solution and the set of capabilities we are giving to SOC analysts to three parts: expertise, processes, and technology. First of all, in expertise, we know that SOC analysts are not familiar with the OT processes and the OT workflows, and we understand that it's important to SOC, first of all, to be exposed to know all the things that truly matter in OT environment, in order to triage correctly and communicate and collaborate better with the OT engineers. And of course, understand also how to continue with the investigation. That's why by exposing data about the OT environment, the OT devices, including the crown jewel assets, the vulnerabilities in your environment, the risk assessment with the asset owner, and so on. And essentially, we want every tier one SOC analyst to be able to identify OT incidents, triage it correctly, do the right workflow around that, and contact the right OT engineer if needed, and understand what is expected to do in each incident workflow. In processes, we are giving the security teams across OT and IT the same tools and the right workflows procedures that adapted and adjusted for their own needs, but with the existing tools, screens, systems that they are already familiar with, so that they will be able to use easily their existing processes, their existing systems, their existing tools to handle also the use cases of the use cases of the OT. And with automating those procedures using the solution package out of the box content that we are providing as part of Sentinel Defender for OT integration, also codify the processes and reduce manual work as part of this stage. And finally, in technology, we are bringing that much needed single pane of glass that will give a SOC analyst holistic experience across all data source, and we will see that in a minute. Now, with Sentinel and Defender for OT, all this set of capabilities is available out of the box, with no need to spend hours of SOC engineers, and everything is just ready once you are connecting Defender for OT and Sentinel. And by that, actually, the automation of the SOC workflows that we are suggesting as part of the document that I presented before, the 15 SOC workflows, just available to the teams very easily. As for the other third-party SIEMs, we are providing the guidance, we are providing the best practices, how to do that also in other SIEMs, what rules should be applied, and so on, in order to have also the support to have OT enabled SOC. Now, to give more context about the capabilities, so Defender for IT streaming to Sentinel, the alerts, the incidents that was triggered by the sensors and was identifying the environment, including also the entire OT context, and eventually the set of capabilities that I described before is being integrated to Sentinel in two ways. First of all, there is a set of built-in native features in Sentinel for displaying the full OT context for SOC team in the screens that they are already familiar with, the investigation screen, the incident screen, the entity pages screen, in order to investigate more easily and efficiently without the need to learn more system, learn another language, pivot, the context switching between different systems, and so on. And the other set of features that we have, and that integrating to Sentinel as part of Defender for IT integration with Sentinel, is out of the box content that provides with zero effort deployment automation for the 15 SOC use cases, but not only for identify and detect the 15 SOC use cases to SOC, but also to build workflows and automation to handle those workflows. So again, this package usually requires some effort from SOC engineer to build, but as part of that better together as Defender for IT and Sentinel, that can be provided out of the box just by downloading from the Content Hub. So more practically, Defender for IT Sentinel provides the ability to download Defender for IT solution package. So once you are going to Sentinel to the blade of Content Hub, you have a bunch of solution package available. One of them is Defender for IoT. Defender for IoT solution package includes already the out-of-the-box content that we have described before, which is 15 analytic rules that help the SOC team to identify the relevant SOC workflows and decide which ones you want to automate out of them. Also, 7 playbooks that can be used for automating the workflow and the remediation steps and the incident response as part of it, and also a workbook that exposing the SOC analyst with full OT environment data, OT environment context, as it is also exposed to the OT engineers in the plant, again, to discuss on the same language and make sure that they are familiar with the context of the OT environment. So all of that kind of context, the workbooks, the analytic rules, the playbooks are available as part of the solution package. And just by going to Content Hub, search for Defender for IoT and click on download, all of that are being integrated, downloaded, and available in your environment. And very easy to customize this kind of content if needed for your own organization needs. Now, all of this also being, of course, added by, including also the Defender for IoT data connector, which is allowing Sentinel to get the Defender for IoT alerts and Defender for IoT context, in addition or on top of the processes automations that we are introducing as part of the solution package. Now, we'll go one by one about the content items that we are providing as part of the solution package. So in high level, analytic rules are using to automate the incident creation process for SOC use cases. So SOC teams can decide which analytic rules they would like to enable and gradually roll out them based on the organization needs, and by that also reduce the alert fatigue by deciding which use cases the SOC team would like to handle as part of the OT-enabled SOC first phase. Playbooks are using to automate remediation steps, the workflows that we have presented before, incident response, communicate between SOC and OT engineer, communicate between SOC analyst tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3, and eventually increase the SOC efficiency. And workbooks are using for, as I said, dashboard and general insights for OT monitoring capabilities and exposing SOC to the OT environment details. So this is the 15 out-of-the-box analytic rules that we have discussed. For each one of the use cases that I described before, we have already in place the SIEM rule, the logic that identify and detecting the relevant alert names from Defender for IoT and creating incident for that. Those analytic rules are fully customized. So we are providing the best practices, we are providing the rule logic that are relevant for a SOC team that would like to be an OT enabled. But of course, that we understand that each organization is different and each organization can adopt, adjust the KQL, the logic, the SIEM rule to catch the relevant alerts from Defender for IoT for the relevant use case. And each analytic rules can be also connected for playbooks, which are solve workflows that we will display a few in a moment, in order to automate the remediation steps that we are providing also as best practice. Those 15 analytic rules can be prioritized and should not be. It doesn't necessary that all of them will be enabled together once you are enabling your SOC to handle OT incidents. We recommend to gradually roll out the analytic rules based on the priorities that Adi described in the first part. The analytic rules also provide some functionality for SOC team to adjust the incident data for their own language, for their own needs, such as changing the alert names, override severity, name description if needed, do some device mapping, the OT device mapping to the incident, so it will be available and exposed so that OT devices will be available and exposed to the SOC team. Also, details about the OT environment will be available as part of the incident, such as sensor protocols and so on. All of these are also part of the out-of-the-box content that we are providing and can be customized in each organization based on its needs. As for the playbooks, we are providing 7 out-of-the-box playbooks to automate the workflows for each use case that we are automating in the analytic rules. And of course, Sentinel giving the flexibility to create more playbooks that are tailored for your organization needs. The playbooks that we are providing are for 3 main goals: for enrichment of the incident, so giving more context, more data for SOC analysts about the OT environment, so that they will know how to take that for the next step. Operational efficiency, so if you want to communicate better between SOC teams and OT engineer and reduce some manual works and some emails or Teams messages, that also something that can be done with the playbooks. And incident response, to block some IPs, to block some devices, and so on. That's also something that can be done with the playbooks. Few examples for playbooks and SOAR playbooks that we are providing and can be correlated to the use cases as part of the workflows automation. The first one is email to device owner. This playbook, eventually for each incident that being triggered, sending automatic email for the OT engineer owner, as defined in Defender for IoT, with the incident details, and eventually the OT engineer for each incident creating in SOC, getting the OT incident, the incident details, and can decide whether this is a false positive or a true positive incident, and by that help to SOC analyst with automating and deciding which incident should be prioritized. If the OT engineer helping with SOC by saying that this is a false positive alert directly from the email that he is receiving, so the incident will be closed and SOC will be updated with the OT engineer data and inputs. And if the OT engineer will say that this is a true positive and something that should be further investigated, so the severity of the incident can be increased automatically based on the input from the OT engineer, and SOC team will be notified with the inputs of the OT engineer, and will take that for further investigation. And that one playbook available in the Content Hub can be downloaded already now. Can be also automated in other third-party SIEMs. And second playbooks that we are providing is the auto triage, which automatically increasing the severity of OT incidents based on the sensitivity, the importance of the devices involved on OT incidents, and by that, based on the organization policy, reducing the manual work and automatically triaging or giving more attention for SOC analysts for incidents that involving OT devices that are more sensitive, more important in important production lines, and so on. Same can be done also with threat intelligence. If we're receiving threat intelligence saying us that an incident involving devices that are risky based on threat intelligence inputs that we are receiving, so the severity can be increased automatically as well. And the third and the last example for playbook is CVE auto workflow. So as part of this playbook, for each incident that is being created, we are enriching the incident with CVE's data in case there are CVE's data on the devices that involved on that specific incident. And not only we are giving more context for SOC analysts to handle the incidents, but also in case the CVE severity is critical, we are auto triaging the incident and increasing the severity, and sending also an email for the OT device owner, so that we'll be able to communicate better with the OT engineer, with the SOC team. That's all. The workbooks also exposing the vulnerabilities and the inventory and the alerts and the incidents as part of the content package for the SOC team, so that you will get full context about the OT environment. So that's all for my end about automation. Now Henk will present the next part, the last part about the investigation tools available as part of investigation process. Henrik.
Thank you, Amit and Adi, for your part, and thank you for especially the real beneficial part of trying to tie the loop back between the OT engineer through the SOC and then back to the OT engineer. That linkage is not so well defined in a lot of organizations. My background is I'm 45 years plus working in OT systems. I designed, built, commissioned, supported PLC and DCS systems, and then later in my career got involved in securing them. And in that process, was familiarized with first CyberX, then Defender for IoT, and now I'm a customer support engineer with Defender. So I'm going to start with a PowerPoint, or whoops, a portion of a PowerPoint that I wanted to go to. Excuse me. The actual situation that I was attempting to discuss is Configure. This is a fairly serious worm, fairly not so recent.
Hey, Henry?
Yes.
We can't see your presentation.
You can't see it. I'm sorry. Share. Am I not sharing the screen? Share. It won't allow me to show the right screen. There we go. Are you seeing it now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. The Configure worm came out in like 2008. It had some fairly extensive, or did some fairly extensive damage in places like the British Ministry of Defense, UK Parliament, French Navy, and other places. Basically was an attack using the weaknesses of SMB in the earlier versions of Windows to attack and then move from machine to machine. It would install itself as a Windows service and then modify the registry to make that look like a legitimate service. It would also modify a function within the Net API 32 DLL, the net path canonicalized function, to enable itself to spread from machine to machine. It used name pipes to go from machine to machine. It went out and actually attempted to use standard tools to determine the public IP of a particular box, and would access external sites to download updates to the worm once installed. It utilized basically the admin share capabilities that existed in the older SMB version 1 and 2, and that were patched by this Microsoft patch. In Defender for IoT, the first thing you would see, and I'm going to drop out of this and go to Defender for IoT, in terms of an alert, is you'd see something that would say suspicion of Configure malware. Obviously, clicking on it just gives you a little more detail, and then you can go into full details. In full details, you can see that there was an MS-08-067 exploit. The source of the exploit was 10.00101, and the attack is appeared to be on 10.0.0.3 on port 445. The ability exists to download a filtered PCAP, and I'll look at that PCAP in a minute. In addition, we provide, in this case, this alert was detected by a snort rule. This is the snort rule that was referenced, and we provide within that the reference to the specific snort rule so you can look at it. The ability to take action exists. You can also see a map of the devices that are involved. And in the event timeline, you can see what may have happened during the period of time that that alert occurred. It was 3 days ago. But during that time, you can see, there may have been other devices discovered, there may have been devices detected, and you can use that information to try and determine the sequence of events that may have led to the issue. The next thing you can do really is to look at the device map. This enables you to familiarize yourself a little bit with the assets. And again, I'll go back to the Defender, and I'm going to look at the device map. In this case, I've already filtered it to this subnet, and I can see that it looks like there were 3 machines involved. The 101 machine, get there. Oh, this is odd. The 101 machine was the initiator of the event. These are the protocols that it was using. And it appears to be a conventional workstation, actually a VMware workstation. And I should have started out, I got a little bumpy start by identifying that this PCAP and the event that I'm looking at was obviously a contrived event. Usually there aren't machines identified as MAL or domain controllers identified as ABC. This was something that was developed, so that we're not sharing any actual customer data. So the ABC machine that is in the center of this little display appears to be a domain controller. The protocols we're seeing are ICMP, which is ping, DNS, net bias, name service, and datagram service, remote procedure calls, and SMB. SMB would be of interest. So going back to the PowerPoint here, another place that you can look is the event timeline, which we already glanced at, and then data mining. So data mining is an ability to get down into the details of what actually is happening with a given machine. So I've created some data mining reports. I'm going to open this one and edit it to give you an idea. I want to manage the report. What's involved in creating the report, I just gave it a name and a little bit of description. In this case, in terms of protocols, I said, show me everything. And I gave it an IP address and saved it. And now when I look at this report, I can see specifics about the traffic associated with this machine. 10.0.0.101, as you remember, was the initiator of this attack. So I might look at domain name queries, and some of the domain name queries are rather interesting. One of the common parts of the configure worm is that it goes outside and tries to use standard tools to find out the public IP address of a machine. So in this case, you can see that we're using, it was trying to use checkip.dynDNS.org, getmyip.org, what'smyip.org, what'smyIPaddress.org. So that's an indication or a pointer that says that, hey, this may have been indeed configure. There's also some NetBIOS connect to other machines, and we can look at RPC and see that this machine was reaching out to 10.0.0.3 with a bind request. So these again are indicators that would tend to confirm what we're seeing. And what I did when I was looking at the event was I looked at it from the aspect of the domain controller, from the aspect of the attacker, and from the aspect of the one of the machines that just happened to be involved. So that gives you an idea of how we can use the basically Defender to identify some of this stuff. So my summary here is, what did we really learn? We learned that 10.0.0.101 was initiated the attack on port 445. We know that it also involved another workstation by this name. We found out that it attempted to access some websites that would tend to make us wonder. We noticed that 10.0.0.101 attempted SMB logins to 10.0.0.3 and also to 100, and both clients had SMB logins to 101. So from that, I put together a simple sketch that gives me some idea of what was going on. Obviously, the domain controller was the focus, and there's a couple of other machines, what protocols were in use. And that just helps me as I look further into the event. Now, Configure has a number of telltales. Basically, one of the first things it does is it creates a random named DLL in the Windows System 32 directory. There's no way that we would actually see that on the wire. So when I look at detection, the possibility for detection there would be Defender for Endpoint, or actually more likely Microsoft whitelisting. Because if whitelisting was enabled, a new file within the System 32 directory would not be allowed. It modifies a function of the that should have been network path canonicalize function in that API 32.dll. Again, that would be a Defender for Endpoint thing. And when you look at modifying the registry, again, that Defender for Endpoint would be a tool to attempt to identify changes that would occur in the registry. Whoops. So the next issue that you would see on the wire, or something that we could pick up in a passive mode by Defender for IoT, would be named pipe connections. So this would be some sort of a generic pipe connection to a system. We could also recognize some attempt to discover a public IP address, which of course we did. We could identify any access to various websites. We could probably pick up administrative share attempts, and then the last part of this threat is that it attempts to block antivirus websites. Now that would happen on the machine itself, so we would not see that on the wire, but that would be a function of one of these DLLs that was added to the machine. When we looked at the alert within Defender, we saw that it referenced a snort rule. And within that snort rule, that snort rule is saying, I'm looking at external traffic. Here's the name that I want to call this alert. And then it's looking for this content. These are hex strings, or actually a long hex string that is effectively a signature for this device. And I've highlighted it here in this next piece. Now, the way it's stored in a snort rule is hex strings are stored within these vertical bars, and then actual ASCII characters are just identified, in between those. So what I did was I turned that into a totally hex string, which is this long sequence of characters here at the bottom. And then what I did was within Wireshark is I said, well, let's look at packet bytes. Let's use a hex value search, and let's search on this string. And when I did a find, I found this string in the PCAP. So that again is a fairly strong indicator that configure was on this machine. So now I'm going to look a little further into the PCAP, and I'm going to jump back and forth between here and the Wireshark program. So within Wireshark, I've opened this PCAP, and if I filter on ICMP, I can see that there was some poking around from 1.101 to other devices to see who else was on the subnet. That's an indication of trying to map the environment. Looking next at DNS within the PCAP, I can see that the machine attempted to access these IPs, which of course we saw in Defender. But then there's also down here we see that it's attempting to identify another machine, in this case 10.0.0.100 as the A reference for this this site, and that is obviously rather suspicious. If we look at net bias, or NBSS is another filter, we can see here that there were a number of attempts to connect to other machines. Many of them failed, but some did not. And this is a named pipe to a null share on another machine. And 10.0.0.3, which was the domain controller, apparently had a null share, IPC dollar, that this attack used to store files there. We can further filter by using something like an SMB status. When the status is all zeros, it indicates a successful connection, and we can get an idea that there were a number of successful connections, session setup requests to transfer files. Additionally, if I look at IO graphs, I took the liberty to go ahead and add SMB packets here, and SMB NT status equals 0. And what we're seeing is that there was a lot of traffic flow, and that traffic flow appeared to be SMB traffic. So going back to my PowerPoint, I think I've gone through the majority of this. And, basically what I'm doing here in Wireshark is I'm just trying to confirm or validate the fact that this is a real attack, and then know for certain whether I need to pass this on to someone else, maybe a higher level SOC team or an owner entity to be able to deal with this particular issue. So I think in general terms, you've heard from Adi some good strategy in terms of trying to build out a SOC strategy. And I really do, having lived in the environment, agree with the idea of taking pieces and starting to implement a piece, and then as you learn more, implement more and more of the rules. From Amit, he's explained that we have some good pre-built rules and tools to use within Sentinel to help the SOC analyst as he tries to work through these issues with possibly some equipment that's less familiar to them. And I hope I've helped with trying to show how you can dig a little bit deeper into some of these. So at this point, I guess we'll open it to questions.
Yeah, we do have a few. The team has been great with answering all the questions. The first one is, can you go through the SMB anonymous sessions data mining and what do they mean? SMB usually defaults to the machine identity. No?
Are you talking about within Defender for IoT or in the packet?
I would assume Defender for IoT.
In Defender for IoT, it basically just shows you that there are SMB sessions, and it gives you an idea of what type of sessions they are, but it doesn't go any deeper than that. If we're looking at data mining, and say I look at SMB, it's showing me that I have an anonymous session between 101 and 3. It'll also show me that I have a null thing here, but we're not providing any more detail on that other than through the alert, with a packet capture.
Great, thank you. The next one we have is, do you need sensors in the network to capture network traffic agents through MS Defender on neighboring systems?
The sensor needs to be able to see the traffic that you're trying to defend. And there's a variety of different ways. Sometimes the VLAN spans are used. And in best case, in my perspective, is to physically have a span port on the network that you're actually trying to defend. Because some traffic is left out in VLANs. And additionally, sometimes traffic that's local to a switch is not seen.
Great. It seems that was all the questions we had unanswered. So I'd like to thank you, Amit, Henry, and Adi, for being our guests today and for an excellent presentation. And thank you to the rest of the team who helped answer questions. At the same time, I would like to remind the listeners that the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements is to visit our landing page at aka.ms/securitycommunity. And while there, you'll find easy ways to navigate and find the resources and learning content relevant to our security products and their communities. A good start would be browsing our bite-sized product videos, ninja trainings, recordings of past webinars, GitHub communities, and more. We love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars. Please take a minute submitting your webinar feedback at aka.ms/security webinar feedback. Thank you, and see you next time. Goodbye.
All right.